What's up, you guys? Today I'm here to tell you about how to go to college for free, or really how to go to college for almost free. Some of my ideas in this video will save you tons and tons of money versus paying for full tuition at college. Now, I make videos like this every week about real estate, personal finance, investing, and a lot of other things. So if you like it, give a like to this video and subscribe. Now let's get into it. Now, as we all know, college is extremely expensive. In 2019, it's estimated that a four-year degree can cost more than $100,000, even at public schools, when you consider tuition, room and board, and a whole lot of other fees that you don't typically think of when you think of tuition at college. Now, since most people don't have $100,000 lying around, they have to figure out how to pay for college somehow. For most people, this comes in the form of student loans. Now, student loans can seem like a pretty good option if you're 17 or 18 years old because you're not exactly thinking about paying them back. You might think, I'm gonna make $100,000 when I get out of school. If I have $100,000 for student loans, it'll take me a year or two to pay off. Well, that's not actually how it works. It's a lot harder to pay them off than most people think. Now, the number one thing about student loans that makes them so bad is that they're non-dischargeable in bankruptcy. This means that no matter what happens to you, if you lose everything and you lose your home and your car and everything else, you still have to pay your student loans back. You cannot default out of your student loans with very, very limited circumstances to get out of your student loans. You have to pay them back. They're non-dischargeable in bankruptcy. Student loans can carry a really high interest rate as well, and if you're trying to pay the student loans back while trying to pay for your food and your housing and your car and everything else that comes when you go out into the real world after college, it's gonna be much more difficult than what you originally think. Not to mention the fact that you have to pay taxes on your income before you even get to pay for all of your other expenses. It can take you a lot longer to pay back your student loans than a lot of advisors will typically tell you when you're trying to take out the student loans in the first place. So what are you supposed to do if you want to pay for college, but you don't want to take out a ton of student loans? If you're 17 years old and 18 years old and you're thinking about going to college, what are you supposed to do to reduce your burden? Well, in this video, I'm going to break down some helpful tips. Hopefully they could be helpful to you, and hopefully they could save you some money. So my first tip is to work part-time for a company that offers either full or partial tuition coverage. There are a lot of companies out there, some of them that you might not even be aware of, that offer full or partial tuition coverage for your time when you work at that company that they'll pay for when you go to school. I want to highlight one in particular, and it's from Starbucks. Starbucks has a program where you can go to Arizona State online and they'll cover all of your tuition when you go to the online program at ASU. This is pretty awesome for a few different reasons. Number one, obviously, if you don't pay tuition, that's gonna save you a ton of money. Number two, if you go to the online program and you stay in a place that's much cheaper to live in than, for example, living on campus at ASU, that's gonna save you a whole lot of other money. Number three, when you work at Starbucks, you're gonna be earning money as opposed to everyone else in school who doesn't have a job, and that's gonna put you ahead. And number four, when you look at your resume and you worked at Starbucks and you went to the online program and an employer looks at it and they say, wow, you had the dedication to actually work at Starbucks and go to school full time. That is an impressive feat. It's gonna look great on your resume. One of the awesome things about this program is that it's pretty easy to qualify for. If you work for only 20 hours a week and you only do that for a couple months of the year, you automatically become eligible. This is pretty awesome. There's not a high barrier to entry unlike other programs out there. You can actually get a job at Starbucks and within a few months put yourself in a magnificent financial position when you get your tuition covered, as opposed to somebody else who simply goes out there and blindly takes student loans to go to the exact same college like ASU. It can save you a ton of money just by doing this one simple thing. Many other companies out there offer something pretty similar, and some of them offer generous benefits and some are a little bit less generous. And I'm going to link below some of the key recommendations that I have to look for when you look at other companies and what to do and how to save you money by working part-time or full-time for these companies to get your tuition covered. I found that Starbucks, however, is the most straightforward, and they have one of the more generous benefits out there. And ASU is a reputable school with a good brand name and can establish you to be more successful in the future. You can get a great job either with Starbucks corporate. You need not stay with Starbucks. You can work for another company after you go to ASU, or you can go to grad school after that and have a good undergraduate education paid for fully by Starbucks while you're working there. Number two, you can go to a college that doesn't charge tuition. Yes, there are colleges out there that don't charge tuition. I will link them below. They are good colleges to go to, and they are more difficult to get into, but they're not impossible. And you can go to these colleges and establish yourself for the future on a very good footing. Now, some of these colleges have restrictions. You have to work part-time for the college while you're in college, but honestly, that's like a pretty good deal. If you can escape tuition by going to these colleges, work a little bit, get some experience, and get out into the real world without paying a ton of money in tuition. You're going to be way, way, way ahead versus somebody who took out a bunch of student loans, because student loans will follow you anywhere you go, and they will make your decisions determinant upon what you have in student loans. You can't take certain jobs or live in certain places or do certain things if you have a giant student loan burden hanging on your back. If you go to some of these colleges with no tuition, you can avoid that burden. Number 3, look at colleges and their income cutoffs for tuition. A lot of people will be surprised that you can actually go to a lot of colleges tuition-free if you make below a certain amount of money. For example, Stanford has a program where if your family makes below a certain amount, you don't pay any tuition, and in some cases, you don't even pay room and board to go there. This can be a great option, especially if you were already considering applying to those colleges, but you weren't going to because they had really high tuition rates. Well, this is something that you could look into. Look at the cutoffs. I'll have links below to some of the major programs out there to consider when you're applying to college. Number 4, you can join the military. The military can be a great option for you to save a ton of money in college because they're going to cover a huge portion of your costs to go to college, and they're going to guarantee you a job afterwards. Now, for some people, joining the military is not going to be an option, or they may not want to, but it's something to bring up and something to look into, because for those who do join, they're going to be in a good financial position, and they're going to be in a good position to have a good paying job lined up afterwards that they can parlay into another job after their service in the military is done. Number 5, you can ask the school for money. What I mean by this is if you get into a school and they give you a small scholarship or no scholarship, you can actually talk to the representatives of the school and ask them for some tuition assistance. I know this personally. After I went to law school, there were many people who got a small scholarship or no scholarship and actually called the admissions officers and said, look, I would like to go to this school, but I can't do it because it's too expensive. A similarly ranked school offered me X. Can you match it or get close to it? And most of the time they said yes. I recommend taking this approach because colleges understand that it's expensive and they want you to go to their school if you've been admitted to their school, and they're going to look for a way to help you out. Number 6, apply to scholarships, and not just national scholarships, but specifically local scholarships. Local scholarships are scholarships that you're necessarily going to have way less competition in, and you're more likely to get than other scholarships, which are much more generous and much more global, but much less likely to get. For example, if you go to your high school or your local communities, you're going to be able to see most of the time a list of scholarships available. They might be $500, $1,000, $2,000, relatively small amounts, but if you get a couple of those, that can actually add up to be a significant amount of money. I know when I was in high school, they actually had a booklet that you could see in the Career Center for all the scholarships. There were something like 30 or 40 of them, and I went to a relatively small high school. And all of these scholarships had varying amounts and they have varying application processes, but it's totally worth it to do because a lot of the times your application to one is going to be similar to another one, and you're going to be able to knock out a ton of them all in once. And again, you're going to have way less competition getting the scholarships, and it's going to look pretty good on your resume if you can show that you've won a few different scholarships. It's going to be a pretty great way to do it, and if you apply to enough of these scholarships, you can earn a lot of money and cover most or all of your tuition. And lastly, I'd like to list just a couple others that won't totally cover your college costs, but will save you a lot of money. One of them, which is often talked about but not implemented enough in my opinion, is going to community college. You could save yourself a ton of money going to community college and knocking out your first 2 years of college and then going to a 4-year university. And even better yet, if you're in high school and you take community college classes, you can actually knock out a lot of the years that you would have to spend at a 4-year college early on simultaneously with your high school education. This can be a great way to save yourself a lot of money because at the end of the day, wherever you graduate from with a 4-year degree, that's the degree that matters. It doesn't matter if you spent 2 years at a community college and then transferred somewhere. Your degree will say the exact same thing as a person who spent way more money to go to that 4-year university initially. For example, my wife went to community college and then transferred to the college that we both went to and met at UCLA, and she actually did much better in college than I did, so there's a point there. And my best friend went to community college, transferred to UCLA as well. My dad went to community college, and all of these people end up graduating with degrees that in the real world somebody looked at and they couldn't tell a difference between someone who went to a 4-year college initially and somebody you transferred into it. And at the end of the day, it matters how you do in college, and it matters what college you graduate from. It doesn't matter how long you actually spend in that college. And going to community college is a way to save yourself a lot of money and time and effort by going there and then transferring from there. One last thing, for those who are debating whether or not to go to a public versus private school, and both the schools are similarly ranked, I'd strongly recommend going to a state school, because the state public school is going to be way cheaper, and when you get into the real world, it's not going to matter if you went to college number 22 versus 25. The employer is going to look at what did you do in college, how were your grades, do you have experience, do you have internship experience, and are you going to be a good employee? They're not going to parse the US News and World Report rankings, and certainly the difference to you is going to be all of that tuition that you take out at a private school versus a public school. I went to a public school for undergrad and then a private school for law school, and I can tell you that both offer pretty similar education. Maybe the private school is going to be a little bit more hand-holdy. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to tell. At the end of the day, you do know one thing, and that's you're going to pay a lot more tuition most of the time going to a private school than you will going to a public school. So if you have the option to go to a good public school, I'd strongly recommend doing that. Now, that's about all. So if you have any suggestions or questions, leave them in the comments below. And just remember that student loans cannot be discharged in bankruptcy. They are very, very expensive over the long course of your life, and they will change the direction that you have to take because you have to pay for those student loans. You never quite know what's going to happen in the political climate. There's talk of people having student loan forgiveness and everything else, but you can't really trust politicians, and you never really know what's going to be the case other than what you decide to do now. So really be smart about where you go to college, what amount of money that you take out to go to college, and try to reduce that money as much as you possibly can. Now that's about all. If you liked the video, be sure to give it a like, and remember to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.